morning, everyone. Thank you for joining. I am Katie Shorey, Startup Maine's president, and we are so excited to continue this series. This is our 12th one of the Entrepreneurs and Ecosystem Builders series. And these events feature thinkers and doers from across the state who are working on building awesome companies or products, and also people who are helping to further develop our startup ecosystem, like my guest today, Chris. So quick shout out to our sponsors. This event would not be possible without them. Maine Technology Institute, Bangor Savings Bank, Maine Venture Fund, and now the Maine Angels. And quick shout out about Maine Technology Institute. For those who don't know, it was founded and funded in 1999 by the Maine State Legislature, and they offer grants, loans, equity investments, and services to support Maine's innovation economy. And MTI also supports the innovation economy through event sponsorships that promote innovation and entrepreneurship like this series. So we thank them. They've been such an amazing sponsor. To learn if you are eligible for funding, please visit mainetechnology.org. We are also supported by the Maine Venture Fund. The mission of MVF is to invest in dynamic businesses that have the potential for significant growth and impact in Maine. And they have been around since 1997, and the fund has invested over $20 million in Maine companies. And last but not least, I am excited to welcome our newest sponsor, the Maine Angels. Maine Angels are accredited equity investors who help entrepreneurs by investing in and mentoring early stage companies. Their goal is to make sound investments in promoting New England entrepreneurs with an emphasis on scalable Maine companies. So we're going to get started. Let me stop this share. If you have questions today, please drop them in the Q&A, because that's the only thing that I'm going to be monitoring, but feel free to say hello in the chat. I'm so excited to introduce today's guest, Chris Wolfel, Director of Entrepreneurship at the Roux Institute at Northeastern University. Thanks, Chris, for being here.
Thanks for having me, Katie.
Well, I should say thanks for also letting me in. I'm actually at Roux today, so that's why you might notice my different background. So let's jump right in. Tell us about yourself, your background.
Yeah, so I am the Director of Entrepreneurship here at the Roux Institute, but prior to that, I like to say I have a long Northeastern circle in my career. I originally did my undergraduate at Northeastern, and while I was there, was part of the team that helped grow and scale an incubator and accelerator there called IDEA, which has now worked with a few thousand concepts and launched about 100 companies that have raised a little over $200 million. After that, did a few stints at a few various software startups in Boston before co-founding an influencer marketing software company in 2013-ish. We took that company through Techstars in 2014. Over the next 5 years, grew it to about 100 folks across 4 offices around the country. And after that, started a second software in the community enablement space that we sold at the end of last year. And I joined the team here to help build out the entrepreneurship platform for the Roux Institute. So it's been a phenomenal kind of journey. And I've always, with my first company, I spent a lot of time in Cincinnati, Ohio. 2 of our largest customers were down there. And I was always kind of impressed at how they were able to build such a great tech scene in, kind of the middle of nowhere. We then opened the second office for the company I started, Maverick, in Denver, and we saw how many of our employees wanted to work in that office because of the lifestyle. And my wife's originally from Central Maine, and we had spent a ton of time in Portland. And to me, I was like, there's no reason all these pieces shouldn't align to continue. And I had actually committed to moving up here pre the Roux Institute. It just was a happy coincidence that they overlapped. I was up here actually the week of March 13th, 2020, looking at property, and we decided that was a bad weekend to look at anything, but we're in a different place now. So that's a bit of my backstory. And then aside from that, I kind of spend the rest of my free time either with my toddler or mentoring other startups. I do sit on the board of a couple other programs that are trying to support entrepreneurs around the country. So it's kind of my
awesome. So for those who don't know, give us the spiel about what is the Roux Institute, and then we'll talk about how the entrepreneurship stuff fits in.
Yeah, so the Roux Institute's the newest part of the Northeastern Global University Network that's based here in Portland. Our focus is on economic development by leveraging learning, research, and entrepreneurship built on top of a platform of partnership. So what that really means is we have learning programs, which are academic, majority masters and PhD programs. We do some custom corporate learning for our corporate partners. Research in the fields of AI, life sciences, data visualization, and the advanced technologies. And then the entrepreneurship pieces, which we'll dive into later. And then all of that's built on a foundation of partnerships. We have over 40 partners right now that include corporate partners, academic partners, and community partners that share aligned missions with the Institute.
So how did the entrepreneurship team come about? Had that always been part of the plan? Tell us about that.
I think it's a little bit of both. I think it was always in the plan, but was accelerated with the opportunity actually that COVID has presented. We've started to see a lot of people realizing they don't have to live in the 4 to 5 traditional tech hubs to build their companies. So when we saw that shift, both of people starting to transition, and I know you and I have had lots of conversations with people that call one of us, or probably many of the other people on this call, and say, hey, I'm relocating to Maine from insert New York, San Francisco, LA, Chicago, blah, blah, blah. Who should I meet? So we started to see that trend, as well as necessity entrepreneurs, right? There's early in the pandemic, there's a lot of people that unfortunately, had to think of building a business because they lost their job. The job was eliminated, things along those lines. So we kind of accelerated the plan because of that, as well as realizing what an opportunity we had sitting as a convener of all of these great partners. I've seen corporate partner involvement. We've done joint funding with the University of Maine system on some technology seed grants. We've worked really closely with the MTI and Maine Venture Fund and Maine Angels, all the people you've mentioned here, to say, how do we further that ecosystem? And I think the time right now is for all these secondary and tertiary cities in the tech world, and how do we attract as much talent to the region and keep them here, because the opportunity is right now.
It really is. And, wearing my live and work in Maine hat, it's like we are having a moment right now, and we need to be very intentional about how we attract this talent and then keep people. But okay, so it's been quite a year for you. You all have been in the news a lot. There's been some amazing news that's been featured, which we'll get into. So what have been some of the highlights, I would say?
Yeah, it's a little crazy to think our team started in September. So it's been, call it 7 months or so at this point. We've grown our entrepreneurship team is now a team of 4, as well as myself, so 5 actually. We launched our first cohort of our startup residency, which is designed to co-locate early stage companies here at the Institute to give them access to researchers, talent, corporate partners, and all of that. We announced an incredible partnership with the Techstars Accelerator to run the Roux Institute Techstars Accelerator, which if you know companies that are interested in applying, applications are open to the end of the month. I will make sure to put the link in the chat here in a few moments. So those on the venture creation acceleration were amazing kind of developments and announcements. We have a few more things we're working on there. We also launched a summer immersion program, which is designed for undergraduates of any background to spend 5 weeks in Portland this summer, doing an experiential learning project with a startup, as well as taking a credit-bearing class here at the Institute and living in Portland. So our hopes there is that'll not only attract people from out of the state, but people that are here that might not have taken a venture creation course or might not have that in their traditional major path. We want to give them the exposure so that they know about how that could be something, that can further their career.
I love that. Gosh, I wish I had that in undergrad. Okay, so you mentioned Techstars. It's a pretty big deal. It's a big deal, and a lot of people have heard about it. So what do you envision this doing for Maine, or meaning for Maine?
Yeah, and I saw Ben. So speaking of the incredible team we built out, Ben has joined us just over the last 6 or 8 weeks. So the Techstars information is there. But so what I see for this is really, this is just the beginning of what we want to do in the accelerator side for supporting startups. And I think finding a global partner like Techstars, recruiting an incredible team. Both Lars and Santi have phenomenal backgrounds who are going to execute the program. What it really does, I think, is shines a light on how much is happening here for the people that are outside of the state, right? I think a lot of the people on this call are here and know what's going on. But there's just a giant pocket of people that they love Maine, but they haven't yet connected. Oh, I can think about I'm a VC in LA and I come to Maine every summer for a few weeks. Like that connection hasn't been there. And we've even just started to see over the last few weeks, more and more people reaching out either to the Techstars team or to our team at the Roux Institute saying, hey, like, this is where my career is. Can I get involved in some way, shape, or form? How can I be part of this? Or how can I refer companies? And I think the global reach of Techstars will help us attract companies to Maine too, right? So both the residency and the Techstars program are open to companies based anywhere in the world. Our goal is that through this program, we attract them to the region, show them how great this ecosystem is, and get them to stay with either a piece or all of their business, right? We've had conversations with companies in Europe that are looking about, where am I going to put my US headquarters? We have companies on the West Coast that are saying, hey, we're never going to have a 500-person office. We're 5 people now. We want to have an East and West Coast office. How do we ensure we inject those people into this ecosystem and get them connected with all the great resources, the corporate partners, the mentors, the support organizations? Mm-hmm. So over that 3 months, really, I hope all of you will help us get those 10 companies, those that are not native Maine companies, to stay and fall in love with the state.
Yes, this is a team effort. Well, okay, so on that note, when it comes to programs, some people may see these programs as competitive to the ecosystem and some of the programs within it. What do you say to that?
I think if everyone focuses on driving value to the entrepreneur, we will grow the ecosystem in a point that if you look at any other major secondary startup market, there are plenty of support programs and organizations and boot camps and incubators and accelerators. And I think it really needs to be looked at as we are trying to grow the pie here. If it's a concern of battling over, hey, I want 80% of the pie versus 75% of the pie, like, we're all going to lose in the long run. So to me, the goal is, and I've said this to people, is like, I would love in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, if I have to convince a founder why they should do the Roux Institute Techstars Accelerator versus insert X, Y, or Z, right? So I think we need to look at that as a grow the ecosystem approach versus, a competitive side of it. And we've had a lot of great conversation and relationships with a lot of the other support programs in the state. And I actually envision there's going to be, we're only going to take 10 companies for the Techstars cohort. We've already had a lot more than 10 applications is what I can publicly say. But a lot of those companies have some interest in Maine, right? So how do we work with the other organizations and even our residency, right? We had 40 applications for the residency. We took 6. There's 34 other companies that we tried to plug into different organizations based on a better fit, because our focus being in primarily AI, life sciences and health, and data and analytics, those are very specific types of companies that we're going to build and support. They're broad categories, but they're definitely specific in technologies, where there's other types of companies that reached out that just, it's not that they weren't great companies, it's just they weren't a fit for what we are strong at. So that's kind of the way that I look at that.
Okay. And so real quick, how are you collaborating? Who are you collaborating with in the ecosystem? If you can just give a few examples.
Yeah, I mean, we've got that long list. Startup Maine's a great first example there. We've got a great partnership with Maine Health, working on the different programs and organizations we can do there. We've got a handful of things in the works with Maine Venture Fund and Maine Technology Institute. There's, I would say, 4 or 5 other organizations that we're trying to figure out how we collaborate on some sort of either boot camp or accelerator or incubator type program, which hopefully we'll have some news on that in the next few months over the summer. But we look at this is we are driving towards how do we build and support technology entrepreneurs. And I say this in almost every meeting. If someone has a concept on how we can collaborate, please reach out, give me the overview. Our team's real focus from now to the end of the year is make sure the 16 companies that we are working with between the 6 residency and the 10 Techstars companies are as successful as possible, which means I'll be honest, I tell my team our bandwidth is focusing on those companies first. Second is what are the rest of the partnerships that, granted, if they're in service of that, easy. But if someone comes to us and says, this is our concept of how we work together, and it's going to further the mission of, actually, I saw one of the questions in there to Tori's question is supporting existing and attracting, right? Like both of those are just as important to us. So how do we make sure that for those companies, we can give that set of resources, and then we'll expand programming kind of down or up the funnel, I guess you would say, over the next few years.
So there are clearly a lot of organizations and people that want to get involved with the Roux. So like, how do you decide who's going to be a good partner and then prioritize those relationships? I mean, you touched on it briefly, but is there anything else you want to say about that?
We are designing a better system for that, to be completely blunt, right? Like there are so many organizations that say doing such amazing work. I think for us, it's going to come down to alignment of mission, focus, and then is it achievable, right? Like can the two organizations together achieve whatever that vision is? So we're working on a better process on, like, I don't want to make it like a formal process, I don't think, but we always look at, is this trying to serve the entrepreneur? Is it trying to drive economic development in the state through entrepreneurship? And then I'm talking through a lens of my team. We have, academic partners that do 4+1 programs and joint faculty and all of that on different kind of buckets of the Roux Institute. But kind of the first is, does it align in that mission? Second is the human capital and team there? I look at, much like a startup, like is the right team to execute in place, either from our team, their team, or the combination of the two.
Okay. So we have some good questions coming in. I just want to make sure I get through mine. So is there ways for individual? You said if an individual professional wants to lend their talents, what's the best way there?
Yeah, we actually have a form on the bottom of the Roux Institute entrepreneurship website. It's just roux.northeastern.edu/entrepreneurship. Maybe
Ben will drop it in.
If Ben's still there, you can drop it in there. On the bottom, there's a form that basically says how you want to get involved. That is, honestly, our MVP of our management system. From there, we're going to start building out different programs based on the personas. So whether you are a mentor, whether you are an investor, whether you're a founder, and then it'll also put you in our monthly newsletter. We run a separate monthly newsletter for the entrepreneurship team versus the general Roux newsletter, because we know sometimes those audiences are a little different. But that's the best, is just reaching out on that form. And then most likely you'll have a follow-up conversation with Obina from our team, our community and ecosystem manager, to kind of figure out how you want to get involved and make you aware of the programs. The Techstars team also is recruiting for mentors. We're working with them to make sure we have the right mentors for that program. So again, same on that form, if you fill out and check off there, it should be a mentor. We'll also make sure you get connected with Santi, the program manager, for that.
Awesome. So how does Chris imagine Maine can create the capacities for entrepreneurship in K through 12, so youth?
Yeah, so it's a big question, a big problem. There is a program that I used to be heavily involved in on the board of down in Boston called Youth Cities, where we basically gave exposure to people, just middle school and high school students, about what entrepreneurship is and what those skill sets are. Because I think the important thing to remember is most of entrepreneurship is about the way of thinking, not necessarily like, oh, start a company, but that entrepreneurial thinking will serve those people very well their entire lives and careers if you get it injected early. Mm-hmm. I would not be surprised if in the future there's some sort of collaboration of a bunch of the colleges and universities in the state around supporting K-12 entrepreneurship. Right now, as I mentioned, the next 12 months or the rest of this year, our team's really focused on these 16 companies that are, at a growth stage, whereas the K-12 is really top of funnel piece there.
Yes. Okay. So I'll get to some of these other questions. I just want to make sure, okay, you've talked about the specific industries that you're focusing on. So if everything goes to plan, right, with the visioning and whatnot, and the growth, like what do you think it's gonna, or what's your vision for how it will look like in 5 years? How will our ecosystem change?
That's a big.
It's a big question. It's big. Dream big.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's how do we get Portland and Maine in the conversation with the, Atlantas, the Chattanoogas, the all of that. They're actually growing rapidly in the tech scene. Like, ideally, we want to be in the Austin conversation, but that is probably 10, 15 years to get into like that type of piece. But I think getting to the point that the ecosystem is self-sustaining, right? Like if you look at Boston, for example, the way that ecosystem continually revolves is typically there's a set of founders that have exited a business, and for a few years they're like they're kind of like the mayor and mayors of that ecosystem. Then they jump in and start another company and someone else rolls out. Like, I think we need to see a handful of wins to inspire other people to get to those wins. And I'm talking bigger, big wins that we want to try to see here, because that will inspire other people to grow bigger and bigger and bigger. So, fast forward 5 years, if there was a handful of traditional venture funds that came to this ecosystem because there was enough excitement, deal flow, we had people relocating their companies here just because, not specifically for a specific program, I think that's the win. And then ideally making sure that grows across the entire state, right? Like, I think there's, this constant tension of the different, nodes, and how does this help the whole state? And I always look at the kind of Boston model where it started in Boston and slowly out to 95, then out to Worcester, et cetera. Like, those waves need to happen. But the only way they happen is a pile of entrepreneurs that build great companies. And the more that we can attract those through support organizations, through talent coming out of all the universities, out of Roux, out of everywhere, and the involvement of the corporate partners, right? I think that's one thing that often gets overlooked in this is there are a lot more large corporations in Maine than people realize. And those companies getting involved as mentors, early customers, just being able to build an ecosystem where, 2-person company can call up one of the large companies and actually get off the ground, get a pilot, get that first test. Like, that innovative ecosystem piece will attract more and more founders.
So also, I mean, you hear over and over again, and do you still have 5 to 10 minutes to stay on like a teensy bit longer so we can go through some more of these questions? Okay. So with attracting companies here, some people have said, oh, well, access to capital, is the challenge, but I feel like you have differing thoughts there. So what do you say to that?
I think access to capital is the biggest excuse of any ecosystem in the world. We live in a global society right now, especially in a Zoom world where, I know a company in Europe that just raised a round from a VC in Dallas. Typically, if you're having trouble raising, it's probably your team, your concept, or your traction, right? Like, there is not a lack of capital in the world right now. It's hard, right? Like, we raised a lot of money for our first company, but we got told no a lot. And I think everyone kind of thinks like, oh, I have a good idea, I'm going to go raise money, it's easy. It is the hardest thing you will do. You're going to get told No, 90 times, but the 91st is the one you need. So if that piece needs to be there. So I think the lack of capital, yes, maybe it's harder here than it is in San Francisco, but that doesn't mean it's impossible. There's plenty of companies, especially in the last few months, that you've seen here raise rounds from incredible investors, right? You look at Luke and Friday and that team, and their backers are phenomenal. You look at the MedRhythms team, you look at Running Tide, like these are all incredible concepts, thinking massive, with founders that went out and found the right capital source. So it might take some more effort, but the capital's out there.
Thanks.
Especially in the current market. Like right now, there's more venture capital money out right now.
Okay, let's do like quick round here. If you can, I don't know if you can see the Q&A. Let's try to bang these out. So there is a question here about like some of the programming, like the residency. I don't know if you want to talk about that quickly, or if there's going to be another Q&A specifically about, or another event sometime about your programs.
The residency, we launched the first version this year. It was our pilot. There's going to be all kinds of adaptations made to it in the second cohort. Applications will go out late summer, early fall for a January start. So I'm kind of jumping around this question, but the residency will look a little bit different in 2022. But those applications will be going live in late summer, early fall, and we'll have probably a whole nother session Q&A on that.
And yes, there is, to Max's question, like just being involved with the Roux from a academic as well as partnership size, like you have access to Northeastern students and faculty.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we think is a competitive advantage for us working with either the residency companies or the companies in the Techstars program is we have campuses all around the world. Northeastern has Boston, San Francisco, Seattle, Toronto, Vancouver, London, and we can tap into those experts or the student pipelines from there. And we've got about, I'm going to get the number wrong, but it's 25 to 30 co-ops that are working in Maine right now that are, most of them were undergraduates from the Boston campus that have come up here to work for 6 months on co-op, and they're getting exposed to the ecosystem. And I'm confident a few of them are hooked and going to stay.
Yes. Let's see here. What else? Okay, so we have, well, as we know, tourism is Maine's #1 industry. Does Roux have involvement in the hospitality?
We are really focused on the advanced life sciences, advanced technology industries, and creating and growing those here as a means of sustainable economic development. So that's where our focus is, just because that's our specialty.
Yep, I'll answer that. Let's see. So there's like two questions kind of about government. Do you see, what's the role of Maine's government in this effort? Is there a partnership? Healthcare, it's not, we know you're involved with healthcare in Maine Health, so government.
Yeah, there's, we have incredible relationships across the state and local governments. And I think, no matter what, it's always, the healthy tension of a state, making sure that the state has all the inputs it needs to keep running functionally and attract companies. So I do think there's ways the state can be involved and support and attract more companies. Like, how do we make it easier for companies to relocate here? How do we make it more attractive for them to grow teams here? Knowing that a lot of companies are going to do away from a single headquarters. Like my hypothesis personally is you're going to see a lot of 25 to 50 person offices sprout up in 50 locations for a company versus one, 5,000 person office. So I think figuring out ways to attract those folks is going to be the best thing that the state can do there. And however we can attract and retain young talent, that's going to be something, right? I think that's always a hard piece of talent that, that's always been a challenge for any region to retain, right? Like even Boston, like we like to talk about, hey, it's hard, all the college grads are leaving, et cetera. Boston loses a ton of grads too to other places, but they also attract in and retain a lot. So how do we look at that on both sides?
Oh man, any here that
A lot
you
of
want
questions in
to
here. I
dive
can't even catch
dive
up.
into? I'm trying to
Um,
give you ones that you'll
trying to pull up here. Um,
bear with us, folks. This will also be recorded, so it is recorded. So we're
and you
just trying to
can all
get
reach
through
out as
all
always.
of these questions.
I'm just going to try to bang through a few of these in order.
Go.
So
Yeah,
to
you go.
Susan on the Techstars program, what's so special and so sought after? Techstars is a global accelerator with a massive network that has over 2,600 portfolio companies that I believe the market cap's about $40 billion. It's incredibly competitive to get accepted into, and it's one of the top, and I would argue the top accelerator platform in the world when you look at global footprint and impact. So you're putting yourself into ideally two incredible networks, the Global Northeastern Network and the Global Techstars Network, by being part of that program. Biggest lesson that I've learned so far as I look to support the ecosystem here, I think the biggest thing is we need more people that are here to identify as being here. The number of people that I have met that are like, oh, I'm in, they'll reach out and say, hey, like, can you, I'd love to talk about Roux, and I'll go check out their LinkedIn and I'll see, LA, San Francisco, New York, et cetera. I'm like, okay, well, yeah, we'll set up a Zoom meeting. They're like, oh, I live here. Let's go grab a coffee at like Coffee by Design, blah, blah. Like, so it's like, how do we entice people? Because people go where other action is. And I've seen, one of the parade founding team moved here from San Francisco, and he proudly, and I'm giving you the shout out, because he cut it over, right? His LinkedIn, I think now says Freeport or Portland, whichever one,
Yep.
but like, the more that we do that, people are going to realize there's a lot more, and all of us know that there's more happening here than most people give credit for. So I think that's important. That's what I would consider. Chris, to yours, you have a dedicated experiential program for residency companies. I'm not sure what you mean by that question. Do you mean like experiences as in like getting them plugged into the rest of the state and doing like fun experiences, or experiential is like experiential human in the loop AI? Because experiential gets into some words here. Did he add?
I don't know yet, but he can send you an email.
Yeah, using this. Yeah. So I mean, we're working on something right now, even with like our bio and life sciences team, to say, how do we make sure that they explore all the different research labs around the state, right? MDI Biological Lab is in one of the most beautiful places in the entire world. People should go see that. We should, get them integrated in as many ways. And, we're going to have those 10 Techstars companies here this fall, September to December. So Chris, if you have an idea on we'll bring them down to the Hoos for a day or something, like we'll figure out the best way to get them involved. Would love to do that. Brian, to your question, I think we chat a little bit about this. Our goal here is to just try to serve as a connector and using our global platform and network to pull people into the region. Construction, Susan, that's a great area. We have a handful of corporate partners in the engineering and construction kind of space. I think the modernization of legacy industries is a really interesting area to apply technology to. So we don't have anything formal planned, but ultimately when we say something that has AI, advanced life sciences, data and analytics, those are pretty broad categories. So if you said, hey, we're using AI to do XYZ in construction or XYZ in aquaculture, like we've got the technology experts. Typically in those, we need the subject matter expert. And that's where I think, to Katie, your earlier question of 1 + 1 = 2. I think that is how we look at partnerships, is like, if our technology expertise can pull in, it's great. What happens on site versus remote in 2021, Susan? So Northeastern, you'll see Katie and I are in rooms, which is why we don't have our masks on right now. We have not shut down our facility at all since we opened in 2020. We opened this campus in October. Northeastern as a university actually did not shut down. We built our own testing facility, and it was just announced we just processed the 1,000,000th test for Northeastern faculty, students, and staff. So we'll continue to run it. There will definitely be in the next few months, I'm working on how we also engage other organizations in using the space. So that's there. Young high school students, we don't have anything yet, but I think that's something that's in the near future. Rebecca, yes. Yeah, so we have great partnerships with our corporate partners, and a handful of them have already committed mentors. Others, depending on the companies and the cohorts, we kind of go out and do targeted outreach. A great example is Keynote Tech, who's in our residency program. There's a very specific mentor, subject matter expert within the Northeastern University faculty network that was the right fit for that company. So you get really company specific in those needs. So that's on that part. I'm trying to get through as many of these.
I know we're going to be done by 9:10. Thanks for everyone who stayed on. I just wanted to get these answered.
Yeah, no worries. Erica, to your question, I think the most phenomenal thing about Maine is I think there's actually more entrepreneurs here per capita than anywhere. It's just a lot of people don't recognize themselves as entrepreneurs. There's a lot of people that are small business owners, or there is that motivation, that drive. If we can make people look at that and the support, like people want to support each other, and I think that's an incredible benefit for an ecosystem. So we have a lot of people thinking entrepreneurially and that want to help each other. If we can foster and continue to grow that, I think that's going to be very powerful. I think how that resonates with the rest of the Northeastern network. I mean, we have multiple institutes that have moved part of their research labs up here, right? So we're going to have part of our wireless Internet of Things lab, our network sciences lab, and our robotics lab, all putting teams here because they want to be here. So I think we're just at the tip of the iceberg on how the Maine ecosystem and the Northeastern global network integrate. And I think over the next few months and years, that'll continue to grow. Jeremy, I think there's people everywhere interested in everything is my answer to that. There's one of the hottest people in the NFT space right now. I mean, Jonathan, if you're tuned in, I'm giving you your shout out from Super Rare, lives on Munjoy Hill, right? Like here's another example of a phenomenal company. I don't know how much, if any, of their capital was raised here, but if you're trying to build a business where your capital comes from can be different than where the company's headquartered, and I think it's okay to just embrace that. Mm-hmm. Devin, to yours, statewide, definitely. I think the challenge for us is continuing quality and density as we run those programs. So we've started in Portland. There's 2 to 3 regions around the state that we're having kind of active conversations with right now to figure out how we can bring and inspire tech entrepreneurship across the state, right? So that's going to be the other focus, is how do we inspire people to build scalable software, technology-driven companies all around the state, and we're going to need partners there. So, if you're someone that's trying to drive economic transformation through tech entrepreneurship in somewhere outside of Portland and want to partner, reach out. Questions are going away. Real estate market. Oh, that's the one I'm going to pass on. I mean, the one thing to say here is it's hard everywhere, right? I think a lot of these challenges, capital, real estate, you could go to 50 to 70 cities and around the world right now. They're all having the same problem, right? Boston has a real estate problem right now too. So I think part of it is saying, you know what, it's a challenge, it's there, let's go. So I think that, especially, entrepreneurs, like there's a lot of challenges, some you can control, some you can't, right? I think that's going to be something that, hopefully someone, steps in and says, hey, I want to invest in Portland and build a lot of condos and apartments and all those and help on the real estate side. But that's a big challenge that it is facing multiple cities. So
absolutely. So Chris, I so appreciate your time, and for everyone who asked great questions. And if you put some of your questions in the chat, sorry, we were only monitoring the Q&A. So, but there's, Chris is reachable, accessible, and they always are having great programs and events, and I can't wait to have events here in person soon. So Chris, if folks, like you said, if folks want to offer their just their expertise, get involved, you can just go to the Roux Institute with the tab that says entrepreneurship, and there's a form there for individuals to figure out how to get involved. But thanks for your time. I so appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. I'm going to do one last plug too. If you know any phenomenal companies that you want to see come to Maine, encourage them to apply to the Techstars program. And if you know any entrepreneurially minded college students that want to do something, have them check out the summer immersion program. The application deadline for that is this Friday. And we actually do have some phenomenal scholarships available for that as well. So two calls to action there. One, if you know companies, have them apply the Techstars piece. If you know great individuals that are interested in startups and entrepreneurship, have them apply for the summer immersion program. And I guess the third is just reach out on that form. I promise we will try to get back to you as fast as possible. Sometimes it does get backed up, but we'll do all we can to make sure we find a way to have a conversation about potentially collaborating.
Awesome. I'll put all that stuff in our next newsletter as a follow-up, as well as a post to this recording. Next up on May 19th is Helken Berg. She's the CEO of Streamo. And we also have an event with CEI Women's Business Center focused on BIPOC entrepreneurs, Black, Indigenous, people of color, barriers and opportunities at the launch stage of business. So join us on May 11th for that. And I'll let everyone go, and we'll talk to y'all soon. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, everyone.